This is Debt Weapon. Think about the first thing you did this morning. You probably put something on your skin, washed your hair, or maybe ate breakfast. And chances are, whatever you used was manufactured by a single colossal entity. Dove, Axe, Hellmann's. These names are familiar, right? They feel safe, comforting even. But what if I told you that underneath these everyday household names lies the architecture of a massive global racket? Today, we're pulling back the curtain on one of the most powerful corporate conglomerates in human history. We're looking at an empire operating entirely in the shadows, running a supply chain that literally prioritizes profit over human life. This is what happens when a monopoly operates above the law.
3.4 billion. Let that number sink in for a second. That is the number of people who consume Unilever products every single day. We're talking about half the global population seamlessly plugged into a massive corporate matrix. Yet, if you ask the average person, they know absolutely nothing about the dynasties that engineered this empire or the ruthless cutthroat tactics they used to capture the market. Make no mistake, this isn't just about market share. This is a planetary monopoly.
And the source materials we've uncovered, they paint a truly chilling picture. Behind all those shiny, high-budget advertisements promising clear, healthy skin, there is an investigative record of unspeakable evil. We're talking about a systematic track record of treating loyal, hardworking employees not as human beings, but as disposable cogs in a relentless wealth-extracting machine. The contrast between their wholesome PR campaigns and their incredibly dark operational reality is terrifying.
So, how did they pull this off? Let's look at Part 1, the Monopoly Alliance, and how they forged this global racket. You see, this immense power never started as some humble, grassroots family business. Not even close. It was actually a shadow merger between Europe's most powerful elite. Back in the late 1800s, these wealthy Dutch butter families just stopped competing with each other. They formed the Margarine Union to completely lock down prices. Then, by 1930, they executed a massive merger with the Lever brothers. Now, the Levers had already conquered the soap industry, and they did it by exploiting dirt-cheap oils extracted from Britain's African colonies. This specific alliance forged the world's very first true personal care conglomerate. From there, they aggressively expanded, swallowing up major brands like Lipton and basically dominating the globe through relentless calculated acquisitions.
But pure market dominance simply wasn't enough. That brings us to Part 2, the sickness cycle, a masterclass in psychological manipulation. They essentially engineered a closed-loop system designed to keep you, the consumer, perpetually trapped. Financial investigators call it the sickness cycle. Here's how it works. On one side, they manufacture hyper-mass-produced junk food that is directly linked to global obesity, inflammation, and deteriorating health. Then, on the other side, they sell you the cure. Yes, the exact same parent company sells the specialized soaps, the creams, and the dermatological treatments required to fix the skin conditions caused by the food they just fed you. It's brilliant in its cruelty. They profit from the disease and then they profit from the treatment.
Now, as they grew, so did the stakes. Let's move to Part 3, the Kodaikanal trap, and how they began outsourcing the danger.
By the 1980s, this massive conglomerate decided they wanted to dominate a highly lucrative new frontier, the thermometer market. But manufacturing these carried a massive, deadly risk. The process required materials that were heavily restricted in the West for a very good reason. So, to completely evade the strict, watchful eyes of US and European regulators, they made a highly calculated strategic pivot. They took their new factory and set it up in Kodaikanal, a pristine, beautiful region of India. They went in there promising the local population economic growth and modern jobs. But in reality, it was a calculated move to outsource lethal risks.
Because the core component required for these thermometers was mercury. Now, we all know what mercury is. This wasn't some mysterious, experimental new chemical. Mercury is a highly toxic element and a deadly neurotoxin. In fact, humanity has known about its lethal dangers for over 2,000 years. The executives at the top knew exactly what they were handling. And yet, they knowingly allowed their workers to be exposed to these toxic vapors every single day.
The biological terror of this daily exposure is almost hard to comprehend. When you inhale mercury vapor on a factory floor, it passes directly from your lungs straight into your bloodstream. And once it's inside, it systematically starts shutting down the human body. It violently attacks the nervous system, it destroys liver function, it totally cripples your immune system. Victims suffer from severe vision loss, chronic pain, and intense speech impairment. And remember, this was the silent, daily reality for those workers in Kodaikanal.
Eventually, the system broke. Welcome to Part 4, the toxic aftermath, when the bill finally comes due.
The illusion of this thriving local economy obviously could not last forever. By 2001, under immense public and internal pressure, the factory was forced to shut its doors. But the catastrophic human toll was already cemented into history. 45 factory workers died from severe mercury poisoning. These were just everyday individuals who simply showed up to work to provide for their families, completely unaware they were being subjected to a fatal neurotoxin.
And the tragedy actually compounded well beyond the factory walls. 18 family members also lost their lives. And here is the truly sickening part: they didn't even work at the plant. They died simply from secondary exposure. The toxic lethal residue was literally carried home on the clothes and skin of the workers. Entire families were decimated by pure corporate negligence.
And then there is the massive environmental crime. When investigators went in, they found absolutely staggering contamination levels. The company had left behind soil laced with mercury at levels 250 times higher than what occurs naturally. They took a pristine landscape and turned it into a toxic wasteland.
So, what was the response from this multinational giant? Well, they simply dipped. They completely abandoned this devastated community without executing an immediate, proper cleanup of the lethal mess they created. They extracted the massive profits, outsourced the death, and just left the local people to suffer the toxic consequences for decades.
But if you think this is just some dark chapter from the 80s, you're wrong. Let's look at Part 5, the modern chemical threat, and the dangers sitting right on your scalp.
It's so easy to look at Kodaikanal as ancient history, but this toxic negligence is a current, active threat right now. In fact, a massive voluntary recall was recently issued on incredibly popular dry shampoos manufactured by Unilever. We're talking about flagship brands here: Dove, Suave, Tresemme. The reason for the massive recall? Elevated levels of benzene. You see, these modern cosmetic formulas are essentially just industrial cocktails, heavily engineered for shelf stability, completely ignoring human safety.
Now, what exactly is benzene? Well, it's a chemical compound explicitly banned by the CDC. It is a known carcinogen. The science shows that even tiny, microscopic amounts of exposure are linked to leukemia and severe blood disorders. So for years, millions of loyal, everyday consumers were unknowingly spraying a leukemia-causing toxin directly onto their scalps, just blindly trusting the brand name printed on the bottle.
And honestly, benzene is just the tip of the iceberg here. There is a much broader network of chemicals actively pushed through this consumer system. Propylparaben, octinoxate, these are estrogen-mimicking chemicals. When they're absorbed directly through your skin, they totally wreck human hormone profiles. We're talking lowered sperm counts and heavily suppressed testosterone. It really raises a dark, investigative question. Is this merely a side effect of cheap, reckless manufacturing, or is it a convenient way to keep a population physically compromised and compliant?
We have traced the entire timeline today, from a shadow monopoly formed in the 1800s to a highly toxic thermometer factory in India, all the way to carcinogens recalled from modern store shelves. The business model is incredibly clear. Their priority is dominance. The collateral damage is your health. So knowing what you know right now about the hidden dangers lurking in your own home, will you continue to feed the sickness cycle? Or will you start questioning the products you blindly trust? Stay dangerous, stay informed, and never stop looking beneath the surface.